the phone that was the size of a brick. There's a very symbiotic relationship between the public and the leadership.
And welcome to the latest episode from JOH Partners and our Transformation Leadership podcast. We're joined today by Omar. Omar, I've known you for a long time. I'm really excited to have you on today. I think what's really interesting about today's conversation is going to be not just transformation from a business perspective, but your insights on transformation at a country and a regional perspective. And I think that's something that's really unique that you can bring to our listeners today. So thank you so much for coming on board. What would be great to start off with is just getting a little bit of an overview for the listeners so they can understand a bit more of kind of your journey to date. And then obviously we can then jump in with some more specifics from there. But again, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Oliver. It's an absolute pleasure. So my journey really started about 20 years ago. I started off in banking, moved on very quickly to commercial diplomacy, working for the British Foreign Office in Abu Dhabi, supporting UK businesses to enter the UAE market. And then moved on very quickly to the Dubai Chamber of Commerce. And then very quickly from there, I continued at Abu Dhabi Tourism, which is where I spent the majority of my career, everywhere from strategy to investment promotion. And now I'm proud to say that I'm the president of Future Pipe Industries in the UAE and Oman. And that is thanks to JOH Partners and yourself, Oliver, for this wonderful opportunity, because the company's leadership, since we're talking about leadership and transformation, the company's leadership from the chairman all the way to the head of a unit and a department are just absolutely inspirational. So it's great to be part of a wonderful team that's super active and have a vision for seeing great things for this company, and it's great to be part of it.
No, fantastic. And again, always happy to help. So as we kind of said at the start, obviously you've been, in diplomacy roles. You've really helped at sort of a government level, sort of help shape. What would you say, looking at things from the UAE, obviously recently hosting Expo, to the inclusion in BRICS, on a regional level, Saudi Arabia, they're also now going to be hosting Expo, World Cup. They've been included in BRICS. There's a lot of exciting transformation and change happening here in the region. What do you see as some of the key drivers for that? What do you see as some of those?
Oliver, the UAE is just over 50 years old. The two key drivers for the leadership's vision here was two things: peace and prosperity. Peace and prosperity were the key enablers for everything that you see that the UAE is doing today, whether it's hosting world-class events and conferences, or whether it's being part of these multilateral, bilateral sort of like organizations. This is what had propelled the UAE to establish this position. Now, when people, sort of like doubted this idea because it came from a Bedouin who didn't have any formal education, they almost like they didn't believe that this was something that was going to come in the books. But one of the things that we were able to do over and over again is prove people wrong, and we enjoy it. We love when the naysayers are there and say, "Oh no, this is not going to happen." When they told people we're going to build an island that's going to look like a palm tree, and people were like, "Yeah, it's going to sink," or "There's this, it's not going to work," or "The tallest building in the world, no, how can it work over there? It won't be there." So every time we get told that something's not possible, I think that is also another driver to prove people wrong. But of course, I think the leaders in the UAE have always been persistent in trying to be better than the day before, and that message continues to be broadcasted to the population living here, not only to the citizens, but even to the residents living here. And they don't just like build castles in the sky, but they do share this vision and tell people, look, we're going to take you along with this journey. It's not only us on the leadership level that are going to benefit, which you probably see sometimes in certain countries. But here, everybody prospers. And again, peace and prosperity are the two core drivers or pillars of what made the UAE be where it is today.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point in terms of, that's what one of the reasons that got me to relocate here. We've since had a family here. We've had my two daughters and so on. So I think it's a great place from safety, education, health, all of those aspects. And then you add on top of this the innovation, you add on top of this the business opportunity. That there's a very, very interesting achievement that's been done here. So you as a UAE national, what was kind of how did you take that guidance and that sort of vision? Was it something that was sort of brought down to you from the family? Was it something that, how did you kind of get through that?
I love that question, Oliver, and I'll tell you why. So I told you that my journey started about 20 years ago, and I was young, right out of high school. I remember very clearly there was one of the speeches from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who's the UAE Vice President, Prime Minister, and ruler of Dubai, and he said that in the future, UAE, it's going to be extremely competitive and challenging for UAE nationals to secure jobs, whether it's in the public sector or the private sector. And in order to prepare the local workforce, he pushed for Emiratis to work and study at the same time. That's why as soon as I graduated from high school, I was a full-time employee and a part-time student. It took me 6.5 years to graduate from university. But what that did is that very early on, I was able to develop my soft skills, which allowed me to understand the environment around me, work better with people from all over the world. And we're fortunate living in a country with over 200, with almost 200 nationalities. And by the time I graduated, my resume was, to most people, very impressive. And it was, it caught the attention of a lot of employers. There were so many times when I would be spoiled for choice to just try to decide like which employer I would agree to work with. As opposed to till now, you see a lot of Emiratis where they still find it challenging to get a job. There's some of them who've been unemployed for a couple of years now. So I think that sort of like brand that I created for myself at a very early stage allowed me to propel myself into the workforce. The other thing as well, Oliver, is just as the same way I saw that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid quickly built his brand online, and he has almost a social media account on everything, and he even has a TikTok account. And I was like, okay, if our leader, who's and now he's like in his 70s, if he's at that age and has all this social media presence, he posts a lot, he's informing a lot, and inspiring a lot. I was like, I think that's obviously he's trying to show to the people that, look, this is a model of leadership that you should try to apply for yourself as well. And then that's something that I took in for myself. And then, so while creating my professional career and everything else, I also was working on my own personal brand, offline and online, speaking at conferences and doing everything else, just as watching the leaders here in the UAE. So I was constantly adopting their examples onto myself, and I am where I am today.
No, I mean, it's fantastic to see. And I think something that I find quite interesting is as you said, it's a younger country, 50 years old, 53, 54. How have you been able to sort of stay ahead of some of those trends? Because ultimately the country is consistently evolving, and you're wanting to yourself grow your career, but also represent your country. And it's a country that has innovation running through its DNA. How have you kind of been able to keep at least up to speed with that, or even ahead of that? How have you kind of been able to do that?
It's pretty simple. I think now we're blessed with data and all of these different research institutions and key opinion leaders that are able to sort of like foresee what are the different challenges and opportunities that will present themselves. And I think the whole concept, like one of the things that some of the people who may not know, but in Dubai, for example, we have the Dubai Future Foundation, and one of the things that they focus on is on foresight. Uh, they they didn't create this model already existed in companies like Google and everything else, where they 10x or 20x or sometimes 100x. What they try to see is how can they solve problems that might arise 10 years from now, 20 years from now, etc. And as a result, I remember myself just being very interested and going to research these things, and then also sharing these insights with people around me, and even with myself, and then trying to adopt accordingly. So one of the qualities of attaining this kind of information is being inquisitive. I was an annoying kid since as long as I can remember. In class, I was the person who was always asking why, what, how, where. I would always keep the class like longer than usual, and the rest of the kids used to hate me because they were like, why wouldn't you just shut up and asking all these questions? But this quality of being inquisitive and always wanting to know a lot about, or wanting to know a little about a lot of things than a lot about a few things, allowed me to always stay ahead of the game, as you rightfully asked.
Okay. I mean, it probably goes back to your personal branding as well, of the, I think it's very clear from you in our interactions, you're very clear on the why. And I think I always see people that can describe their why, their purpose. This is why I get out of bed. This is what I'm looking to do. And I mean, for you, there's a number of additional things there in terms of, being that UAE national as well, that I think, does help convey your message at a deeper level. And I think, so something you mentioned there, which is very interesting, is obviously Dubai and the Future Fund and so on, looking much further into the future. A lot of businesses, it's all gone the other way. It used to be the 5 to 10 year plan. Now it's the 1, the 2 year plan. And sometimes, let's talk about a 3-year plan. How do you see businesses adapt, or how do you see businesses adapting to be successful in Dubai or the Middle East for those reasons? Because there's a lot of change going on here, and there's a lot of, yes, there are steps that happen over 1, 2, 3 years, but we have a really long-term vision, and these are really key things that we have to do. And that alignment, the businesses that do that do so much deeper entrenched. Yeah. How have you seen that, and what are some of your takeaways on that?
The key word, Oliver, is agility. Companies, countries, humans need to be agile. One of the things that we all know, and we hear this all the time, and I'm sure in your space you hear this a lot, is change. Humans, everybody hates change. We don't like to break our routine, the status quo, etc. But that's the beauty about the UAE. And I think it's forced us as a people to become agile and quickly adapt to the new reality. So I think that we have been also kept on our toes about a lot of things. And I think one of the ways that the government even does that is, you'll be surprised. Back in the day, when remember when we had our traditional newspapers would want to post certain stories or headlines on particular days of the week or whatever, because this was the time when you get the highest amount of readership. Today, you will see government restructuring happening on a weekend. The announcement will come out on X, which, former Twitter, will come out on X and say, this is the thing. So you actually would have to, I tell companies and people from all over the world, and even the Emiratis, you need to follow His Highness's social media account, because he literally tweets several times a week. And don't be surprised, a lot of the times he does it on a weekend. So I know sometimes some people will say, oh, you know what? I want to detox, take a social media detox or whatever. Fine. Yeah. Maybe don't be on certain platforms, but on the platform where generally announcements are made, which will be X and on LinkedIn, you have to be active. Set your notifications, particularly on His Highness's account, because that's how you know. So, and if you adopt that policy, like if he's announcing something where it's going to change the direction of like how business should be run and operating, you have to try to adapt to that as well, because these people are surrounded by so much intelligence, a lot of highly, experienced advisors and people in the know who know or predict what's going to happen. So when they take these decisions, it's not done just based out of like, haphazardly. There's a lot
Yes.
of insight into it. So that's my recommendation for people on how to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think what's very interesting, the Dubai statement there was, I was at a mastermind conference recently, and the guy leading it was a gentleman called Daniel Priestley. Look him up on Amazon, he's very well respected, etc. He was at this conference and he said he'd been doing something in the UK, and there's always a resistance, even from senior people he speaks to, for change to a certain point. And he said, Dubai, it's so refreshing. The question is not how, the question is when. And I think it was a very sort of telling thing. And then the biggest thing he said that I thought was super interesting was where business is at the minute, especially in the UAE, is because it's so adaptive to change. He said a lot of organizations are actually keeping much more attention on the SME space because of the agility, going back to your statement, agility, that they can move faster. And so I think you see a lot of these large conglomerates are saying, well, how do we make that change? Things like, risk being a lot more in people's conversation now, because we need to, what is the risk of not changing? What do we need to do that? And it's I think a lot of the times where we see, when people hear digital, they think, oh, well, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a developer, that's not for me. No, it's changing everyone's life, whether you are in finance, operations, whatever it might be. How do you adopt to that? And it could be something very small, it could be something extremely large. And I think that's where the UAE does very well at that. It's open to those changes and really pushes the envelope, for sure.
Exactly. And one of the things, Oliver, especially when it comes to leadership, one of the important qualities is empathy. And I think the leadership here in the UAE has empathy. So even when it comes to adopting these new policies or trends or changes that are going to be made, the government does empathize, and they don't, whilst there are laws or new rules that will come up, you're always given a grace period. And a lot of the times, how many times have we seen grace periods here being extended? Like they do that all the time. Even when the tax law was issued, they've extended it and extended it. So they do. There's a very symbiotic relationship between the public and the leadership in the UAE, which is amazing. So that I think that unique relationship that we have here, maybe it helps because we're not a very big country like in other countries. So the ear of the leadership to the street, to the world in the street here is very close, and everybody is kind of like heard. Sometimes you tweet, and even when you tag His Highness, just because you don't get a response, don't assume that they didn't read it. So this is what I tell a lot of people, and they even give you a lot of platforms to express what may concern you or affect you and everything. So like, again, if we look at the Dubai government, they have the 04.gov.ae. That's a website which is open to the public and everybody, and any ideas, complaints, suggestions you may have to any government department, you can address it there. This all goes directly to His Highness's office, and he gets to read some of these ideas and suggestions that are being made by the public. So having these sort of like this, that's like almost like an electronic or a digital majlis, as we like to say, like where it is a setting where people like to get an opportunity to interact with the leadership here. So the digital majlis that the UAE has created is fantastic, and I think this is why we continue to see the UAE ranked at like top 5 in almost most indices around the world for most government services.
No, it's a very good point. And I think something that has been a really interesting shift in the time that I've lived here is that look towards the sustainability in the future. And I think it's not just the future of build and they will come or make the biggest or the tallest, but sustainability wise, how do we address this? And I think that's been really interesting to see as a country and a sort of vision. And I think for you then, how is that changed has that changed some of your approaches, some of your learnings? Again, we're sort of looking at this on this podcast from what would be some of the things if we were saying to individuals for the future trends to look at, to learn from, to address. I see the sustainability, I see green, I see obviously innovation. Risk portfolio is a sort of a byproduct of those things that people need to look at. But how are you sort of identifying some of the trends that and the learnings that come from that? Because these initiatives are great, but how are you sort of positioning to sort of take advantage of some of those?
Oliver, even on the subject of sustainability, it's funny because, as much as, yes, the innovative side of all of this is the kind of technologies that exist now to help us become maybe more sustainable, whatever, not using paper, not printing paper, but just sticking to emails, or not printing business cards. Now everybody has a tap on their phone, or these digital cards that they're walking around with. However, once upon a time, especially I think all over the world, and even here, they used to have this sort of circular economy. They used to, not consume as much as we are today. So we're honestly, in a way, we're kind of going back to basics. It's almost not going to Neanderthal era, but somewhere there, we were self-sufficient, we were self-sustained. So for example, let's take something simple. Here in the desert, in the Bedouin community or the lifestyle, they would eat meat in the winter. In the summer, they would eat fish. So you're not consuming meat all the time, because they talk about how much beef is one of the biggest carbon emissions in the world. So if we go back, we actually just have to go back to how are we actually living? We were having certain things and a certain amount based on the time of year. So we're really, it's not, if we just have to go back. So for me, when you ask the question, how am I taking this? How am I using these learnings on these new announcements and policies? And even now, for example, they said no more use of single-use plastic, this was just announced recently. Now, all these things, again, even when you go back, they used to just have these bags that were made out of calf leather or something, and this was used for the rest of your life. It would be passed on, And now, the last time I remember when I bought the reusable bag, it's the only one I've been having this for now the past couple of years. I didn't change it. I didn't need to. It's durable and it works, and I don't need to use plastic anymore. I haven't been using it for a while. So I think yes, I take in these policies and changes that are being announced by the government and adopting it to my own personal life. But also at the same time, I do a lot of research and go back to how was it done back in our forefathers' generation, and we're really going back to basics, where they really pioneered sustainability, and now we realized there's been this era where we messed up the world so much that we need to go back to that before the world just explodes or turns into a big furnace.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about that. Even on a family level, we are, on the weekends we're looking at making our own breads and jams and stuff like that, which it's not the most rock and roll thing, but it is removing some of that ultra processed food. It is getting healthier for the children and things like this. So I think it's nice to be in an environment in a country where that is a conversation that's being had. There's a lot of other factors that go into that, but it's a super interesting one. In terms of then, what would you say are your kind of predictions then for the next, and I know this is a real crystal ball question, but from where do you see the next 10, 20 years, and more importantly, the potential skills that may be needed? And that's from any individual, but what do you see, if you are weak at this today, absolutely get on it. And I don't just mean I'll be involved in digital, but what do you see as this will drive the economy for the next 10 years? These are things which my friends that are doing XYZ, these are the people that really are pushing the boundaries. They're helping with that innovation. What do you see those being?
I'll tell you this, Oliver, in this way. Right now, we are living in this rat race, and I think it's creating a lot of awareness about how we are living our lives, the aspect of mental health, longevity, all these things. Like we're realizing that what is really, really important to the core in the end of the day is how can we be better, live better, and feel better. And that's kind of like the way that all of the work that's being put in when it comes to biotechnology, nanotechnology, all of these different things. And even when you talk about food tech, agri-tech, like how can we have, or even when it comes to precision medicine, when on the health tech side, how can we have things that will be for us with our DNA and programs and stuff? It all comes down to this. So for me, the way that I summarize it, or how I see those next 10 years, jobs will be for robots and life for people. So there's repetitive things and all these things that we're doing that seem sometimes like almost obsolete. And we're like, why are we doing that? Why are we sitting on a chair for God knows how many hours? All of those things are going to be a thing of a past, and there will be a massive rise. I truly believe in automation and robotics and obviously AI, but it will come to a point where we will be able to live better, and in a sense we will kind of almost we will need to like hone in our soft skills even better. Therefore, there'll be better communication skills, hopefully less conflicts in a world where, my God, there's everywhere is a hot zone right now. So I think that is my vision for what the world will be in, and hopefully, like, for your kids, your two daughters, Oliver, like they will have a much better environment where they will grow up in, as opposed to what we're seeing right now. Because our generation came in at a very transformative stage where, we grew up and we saw how, the phone that was the size of a brick to now it's like, it's like
they'll dial it round, and
exactly. We've seen all of it. I had a pager once upon a time. I can't believe I went through this.
God,
A cassette.
We're taking it back down.
Yeah, Walkman, a Discman, and now you do nothing. You just have on your phone Spotify, and that's it. Or Shazam just grabs whatever song is out there. It's crazy. So that's sort of insights.
I watched I can't remember why it came up, but I rewatched the launch of the iPod the other day, and literally the fact it was so far ahead that it was about the time when they had CDs, and I think one or two really large you could burn to MP3s now, like you can burn like 50 songs or something onto a CD, and that was about it. And all of a sudden they came and said, here's 1,000 songs, and you can do it in like and I think it still took like an hour or something, but it was revolutionary. Like, oh my gosh, that's insane. And it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't.
Yeah. When I tell my younger sister we had something called floppy disk, she's like, "What? What is that?" I'm 37. She's only 23, and she laughs at me. That's crazy. Like, who would have thought? Like, I feel I'm still like 15, anyways. I'm like, how did that even happen? So I think all of these things are I guess, that's why I'm saying that I just feel like we're going to just see more transformation, more automation in that sense, and hopefully, and I pray that we really, really will start to focus on bettering our human selves for the sake of humanity.
I think that's really nice points, and it's in the right country to be in. I think that's kind of one of the other reasons why you and I got on so well is obviously some of the changes that we've done at JH Partners over the last couple of years in terms of some of the processes, the automation that we've brought in, and some of the different tech stack and things, which has meant the team actually has just a better work-life balance. I mean, that's been just a really nice thing for us as a business. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but I think if every business could do a bit of this, the world would be a better place. You would always be there for your kids, bath time and dinner times and all this. So it's we may not get there, but I think it's the let's write it down, let's work towards it, and let's reflect on it. And I think that's the from some of these different podcasts, that's a good thing which we haven't touched on today. I haven't asked the direct question, but I'm sure you do it. I always see that people that say, look, you need to write down that vision so that you can reflect on it. You can look at, if we are not there, when do we need to adjust? When do we need to pivot? And you know, that sort of focus is really key to get to that end goal for sure.
I agree. It's all about manifestation. If we manifest it, you will get it. So, I mean, I've always manifested being in a position like this, and I will forever be grateful to JOH Partners for making this manifestation come true. You know, it's a huge blessing. And you're right. You know, Oliver, like even when you talked about at JOH Partners, you guys adopting technologies. I remember I told you this, and I'm not just saying this because of, you know, we're having this conversation, but it was honestly a seamless like process with you. You know, you sending me those short videos, literally it was like less than 2 minutes. You tell me, look, this is what you need to prepare for your interview, etc., etc. Like I just had to watch that. I could watch it as many times as possible, because sometimes you don't take notes, or when you forget in a conversation. But having that there, we literally, you know, it was a very useful tool to get me through my interviews, and I'm here now. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. And again, you know, it's nice that it's well received. Look, I could honestly talk to you forever, but I'm conscious of time, and I do appreciate you giving us time today. So in terms of moving towards the end of this, if you were to, for the listeners, give a 1, 2, 3 kind of key things that you've learned, or key things that you might wish you'd done, and I don't mean regrets, but maybe I would have pushed harder at this, or, you know, I'm glad I did this, or I would love to go after that, or just simply the biggest thing I've learned is this. What would be your kind of takeaways? And it could be in the future I'd do this, and I've been grateful for that, or take the question how you want, but kind of your 1, 2, 3 sort of takeaway statements, sort of sound bites to people. What might those sort of look like?
Can I close with 3 quotes?
Then? You can do as many as you want. But let's go with 3. You can do 4 if you want.
Okay, perfect. So the first one is, the only disability in life is a bad attitude.
Love it.
And number 2, I would say I had it in my mind. I just missed it. But there was a second one that I really like to use a lot. I don't want to say, I know the third one, but there's a second one that I really like to talk about. But usually, well, the second one I would say, rather than using a quote, I would say that I think I don't, you know, I don't regret anything that I've done, any of the decisions. Like, you know, I made some poor decisions, obviously, and, you know, all I can say is I think wherever there was fears and I didn't take that step, I wish I had just tried more. I wish I had learned more skills and diversified my skills. I mean, I'm gonna put it out there, and this is pretty embarrassing. I still don't know how to drive a stick shift, like a manual car, like the manual transmission, which is terrible. I mean, for a man my age, not knowing how to drive a manual. So like again, hone your skills. Like you need to develop not only your soft skills, but also these vocational skills. Like you have to know, I wish I was a carpenter for a while. I wish I was a mechanic. I wish I had tried these other skills. I think it's important for someone to know. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's my second one. And the third one is, the best is yet to come. So these are the 3 kind of like things that I would, you know, like to leave people with.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that in terms of, you know, we spoke about this before. I was originally a mechanical engineer in the Ministry of Defence. I mean, you know, from that to where we are now, you know, there's a lot of things that happen in between. So I think, yeah, it is diversify those skills, but at the same time have that inquisitiveness. I think have that empathy, have that agility. You know, that from an individual, that with the UAE, I think it all marries together, you know, perfectly well. And it's a great journey to be on. So no, very interesting stuff. Look, again, thank you so much, Omar. I've really enjoyed today. It's been absolutely my pleasure. We'll catch up again. We'll catch up again soon. And thank you so much. And again, all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.